It is so beautiful out today that I thought, you know what, let's have Matt's class outside. So what we're going to talk about today, we are going to go over terminology that's used in industry. So this is really important. I didn't get enough terminology during the time I was in school. When I went into the industry working at advertising agencies, working at movie sets, working at studios, working in the illustration business and comic books, I noticed that people were throwing around terms left and right, and I had no idea half the time what they were talking about, so I kind of had to learn on the fly, and some of this is back before the internet, so I couldn't just Google stuff on my phone really quickly. So over the years, I've kind of amassed a collection of terms that I like to go over with my students, and I want to share with you guys today. This by no means is a complete list. My gosh, the complete list would be endless for all these industries, but I think the list that I have for you guys today is a good one and will get you guys primed for diving into the industry. That's what we're gonna get today. Oh my God, whoa, today. Leaping right to it, aerial shot. So real easy, aerial shot is just a high angle view when you're up high looking at something below. This is not just like on a ladder, and this is not just like a crane. This is like looking over the edge of a building or over the edge of a cliff. In some cases, it could be helicopter shots. These days, more often than not, it's usually a drone because they're much cheaper and drones are pretty sweet. Next up is action, and you guys probably know this from watching any kind of behind the scenes of movie making. It's what the director says at the beginning of any take. Added scenes are very important because we kind of begin in pre-production. We have a script and we have storyboards and everything is planned out. During the principal photography phase, which is the middle section of the entire production, there are a lot of ideas that people get, and sometimes people are adding certain scenes or shots or doing alternate takes on certain things. Those have to be dictated as added scenes, because when this goes to post-production later, if suddenly there's these extra shots from the movie and they don't recognize what they are, they'll just scrap them. Like, what were they doing? They must have just been drinking some funny Kool-Aid that day. So added scenes are very important. Aspect ratio, we're actually going to spend time in a future video talking about aspect ratio, but the long and short of it is, no pun intended, it's how wide your screen is compared to how tall it is. Not to be confused with how big your screen is, because the aspect ratio of your phone, let's say you go to a movie theater and you've got this giant screen. When you watch that movie on your phone, it might be at the same aspect ratio. Obviously, it's a lot smaller on your phone, but it's simply the ratio of how wide your screen is compared to how tall it is. Atmosphere. So there's two different kinds of atmosphere, and we're going to get into this when we get into cinematography. But usually when people talk about atmosphere, they're talking about any kind of tangible elements that are real in nature that help fill the depth. So some of these are like snow, sleet, rain, fog, dust. You might have leaves falling from the trees, or there could be little like flower pollen in the air, different things. There might even be some stuff out here that's kind of buzzing through the air that's giving some kind of atmosphere. Backdrop. So we need to talk about the history of backdrops really quick. Backdrops started, this is back when filmmaking was invented, and they would just paint fake backgrounds on a piece of wood like this, and they would have the actors and actresses walk in front of it, and you could have like fake trees, or you could have fake buildings, and they would just paint them, and a lot of times they actually worked pretty convincing. Then in the 70s, there was this new technology that they started doing, cutting edge technology, where they started doing matte paintings on glass. And this was an awesome technique that they used for all of the Star Wars movies and all of the Indiana Jones movies, where they would actually paint something on glass and have it close to the camera, and then you could see through it, and they would film actors kind of far away, and the things that were on camera would also look like they are taking place in this giant environment. Such a cool technique that really worked well and holds up really well today still. Really cool stuff. So beat is a directional word or a pause that you indicate to show in an actor's speech how they are delivering this dialogue. Sometimes you have these random pauses, and it really helps kind of show what someone is thinking, or if there's a thought process in their head. Let me give you an example. Let's say I'm talking to you about previs, and I'm telling you about beat, and then, oh my gosh, I am so hungry. I'll be back in a second, James. Okay, obviously that would be really weird, right? Like 1 second I'm talking, and then the next I just completely leave, right? What would be a little less weird if I said, okay, today we're talking about previs terminology. I want to tell you guys about beat. Beat is a directional word. Oh my gosh, my stomach. James, I'll be back in a second. Okay, that also is weird, right? But at least it's a little bit less weird. There was a pause there where the audience is wondering, wait, something's going on. Like, are they thinking about something? Or maybe their stomach is rumbling. The fact that suddenly there was a pause in the dialogue, it's like the wheels are turning and the audience knows something is happening. They either realize something or they're feeling the effect of something, whatever it is. So that's typically what a beat is used for. And if you're reading a screenplay, you'll actually see, in parentheses, you'll see the word beat. However, there are two actors that you guys probably know of that overuse beat all the time. James, can you tell me who one of them is?
I want to go with William Shatner.
William Shatner, and that's great because William Shatner, you guys, if you don't know William Shatner, he plays Captain Kirk from the original Star Trek. So he always says things like, Spock, I think we're in trouble, right? So he's got these weird beats in like just weird places. There's another actor, actor number 2. Do you know who the second actor is that overuses beats just really, really crazy?
I want to say it's Mr. Christopher Walken.
Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. It is Christopher Walken. That's good. And Christopher Walken, he's just got these really interesting beats in really weird places. True story about Christopher Walken. What Christopher Walken does, every time he gets a script, he has his assistant take whiteout and get rid of all the punctuation. If you don't know what punctuation is, it's like periods and commas and question marks and exclamation points. So when he gets a script, he doesn't have any of that. What he does is he puts those little pauses where like normally a period or a comma would be. He just puts those pauses wherever he feels like it. So I want to show you. Now, I don't know how to talk like Christopher Walken. I don't do like the voice or anything, but I want to show you, especially if you do the voice, I want to show you how you can speak like Christopher Walken. So to demonstrate how Christopher Walken talks with the beats and he just randomly inserts them anywhere, I just grabbed the closest book I can find. This is Pucker. This is one of my art books. And I'm going to read to you some of the introduction. The introduction was actually written by John Dolmayan. He's the drummer of System of a Down. So I'm going to read you some of what John Dolmayan said for my introduction. But when I read this, I'm going to completely ignore periods, commas, and I'm just going to put in those beats wherever I feel like it. So here we go. Power of the Empire. So dramatically, I'm confident that you will enjoy his vision of some of your favorite female fantasy and science fiction characters. Matt's work is truly beautiful, and it's my hope. So okay, so that's, I know that's like, I can't do the voice, the Christopher Walken voice, but can you see how the weirdness of where those beats are? I think the magic of Christopher Walken, me personally, and I love Christopher Walken, and a lot of people say he's a really good actor. I don't think he's a good actor at all, actually. I think what it is, I think what people are confusing for it, because he has those beats in the wrong place, you're just lingering on every word. Like, what on earth is this guy even saying? Like, was that a question or a statement? Like, I don't even know, right? And I think because we linger on everything he says, it's almost like he steals every scene he's in because he's just so awkward and bizarre. But anyway, there you have it. Now you can talk like Christopher Walken too. Boom. You've probably seen booms before. It's that big fuzzy microphone that's like on a long fishing pole. And sometimes if you're watching live TV, you may have seen on Saturday Night Live before where that little fuzzy microphone accidentally dips into screen, whoops, and then they pull it right back. So that's the boom. And actually, crazy enough, people are starting to cosplay as a famous boom microphone holder. Have you seen? So in the original Star Wars movie, there's this classic photo behind the scenes that they filmed of Luke Skywalker on Tatooine, and you can see the entire like film crew working. But if you look closely, the boom person, there's this guy holding, this giant fishing pole with the boom on it, but he's wearing nothing but hot pink, really short shorts. And it just stands, especially on Tatooine and everything else is the world of Star Wars, it just stands out kind of funny. Now when you go to Star Wars conventions and sometimes just normal conventions, you'll actually see people cosplaying as this boom person, where you'll see them walking around in these hot pink shorts carrying the boom pole. And I'm sure there's a lot of people at this Star Wars convention like, what is this person doing? Why are they dressed like that? But people in the know, and now you are one of those people in the know, when you see someone cosplaying as that, you're going to say, nice, good one, good job. So the actor call sheet lets actors know where they need to be, what they need to be wearing on any given day. Now, you probably already know this, but movies are filmed not in order that you see everything happening. Usually they're filmed in whatever order is the most efficient to film that production and to make things happen as quick as possible. So a lot of times things are not only filmed out of order, but you have scenarios where you could have someone running into a store, let's say, and on the outside of someone running into a store, and then on the inside when they're in that store, that could possibly take place over 6 months. And maybe they film first where someone runs in the store, and then they don't even film that person from the outside running into that store until 6 months later, or even longer than that. You never know. So when they film the person coming into the store, they haven't been running a long time, so they have to like spritz them with a little bit of water, make it look like they're sweating. So then when they break into the store, they say, hey, is there anything I missed, right? So they have to totally like pretend like they were just running, even though they haven't filmed the running yet, which they're going to film later. And obviously you got to make sure they're wearing the same clothes, because how weird would that be if you're watching the movie and they run into this place and then when they go inside they're not even wearing the same clothes. So that's what the actor call sheet is. Next up, cut means 3 different things. Cut is what a director says at the end of any given take. Also, cut is a verb. Sometimes you're cutting out a portion of film, you're eliminating something. And then last but not least, cut can also be a noun. So sometimes people will use the term cut referring to like a portion of footage, like, oh, that was a really good cut. So it means 3 different things. Be aware of those 3. So dailies used to be a really important thing. Now more and more people are shooting digitally. So 5 years from now, people probably won't even remember what dailies were. But whenever you're filming something on actual film, it has to be developed, and it's not instantaneous. So big studios can afford to have that film, they call it overnighted, right? So it's really just developing it overnight, and then they have it the next day. But they can't really watch it the next day because they're busy filming what's on the agenda for the next day. So that night, they have to watch the dailies from the day before. So it's kind of a mind F a little bit, because you're always watching the dailies, not from what you just filmed that day, but from what you filmed the day before. Sometimes that can run into problems though, because if you're on location and if you spend a day, let's say filming in Arizona, like it looks like everything was good, but then when you come back to LA and you go through the dailies the next evening, there might have been like a piece of hair on the lens or something that could have screwed it up that you didn't notice when you were filming. Now everyone has to go back to Arizona because they didn't catch it right away. Yet that's another good reason why a lot of people are moving to digital media. Digital media is kind of cool, and film, there's nothing like it. It has this aesthetic to it that is just awesome. But there's a lot of cool things you can do with digital media. The biggest of which is you can shoot 24 frames per second. That kind of has a really good cinematic feel to it. But there's all kinds of plugins and different color grading that you can do to really give that sense of film. Dissolve. So we're going to talk more about dissolve when we get into camera techniques and transitions, but essentially dissolve is when you've got moving footage that's gradually replaced by more moving footage. So a dolly shot is anything that's filmed on a dolly. It's a tracking shot. They make dollies in all different sizes. They usually look like a little wagon that can be pushed or pulled, and you have a camera person sitting on the dolly, and that way they can get really nice sweeping camera angles that just look really professional. We're going to talk about Dutch angle when we get into camera techniques and transitions, but a Dutch angle is where normally you've got an equilibrium and everything is kind of just filmed like this. A Dutch angle is when you have a shot like this and then it tilts a little bit like that. Exactly. So that is your Dutch angle for the day. Most movies and TV shows usually have an establishing shot at the beginning of every scene. And the reason why, it just lets the viewer know kind of where everything is taking place. It's not a rule, so you don't always have to have an establishing shot, although sometimes it is pretty helpful. But the establishing shot is usually at the beginning. Now, creatively, you could have an establishing shot at the end of your scene. Sometimes I've seen movies or TV shows before, maybe you remember seeing one where you'll see everything taking place and you assume that your characters are in a certain place, but then you have the establishing shot, you pull back to reveal, oh my gosh, they were on a golf course the whole time. Who knew? That's the establishing shot. Executive producer. Before we talk about what an executive producer is, we need to talk first about an actual producer and what their role is. This is another one of those things when I kind of moved into the entertainment business, I kind of knew what a producer was. I mean, I had read in a book what a producer does, but it's really hard to describe exactly what a producer is. And if you read any textbook on filmmaking, sometimes it's kind of not clear. And I really didn't know, like, what's the difference between a director and a producer? Because textbook definitions, it almost sounds like it's the same thing. I want to share with you a story about how I learned what a producer was. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I was poor. I didn't even have a car. So when I started working in movies, I actually had an agent that didn't know I didn't have a car. I rented a car just to meet with my agent, and they just assumed, why would they hire me if I didn't have a car? So anytime I had work on a sound stage, or if I was meeting with an art department or anything like that, I would rent a car for the day, and I would flip through, this is back before the internet, so I would flip through this thing called the Yellow Pages. It was this big book, and I looked under C for car rental, and I found the nearest car rental to where I lived in Los Angeles was a budget car rental, and it was 4 miles away. So I would get a call in the morning, hey, you got to be at the Paramount lot, you got 45 minutes to get there. I would run 4 miles away to the nearest budget car rental. I would rent a car, and then I would go to my meeting. The good news was, because I rented a car, I would have it for 24 hours. And man, when you don't have a car, suddenly you have a car for the day. Man, that thing was like the Millennium Falcon. It was awesome. And then I could go get groceries, because normally when I got groceries, I would have to carry all my groceries home, walking like this. So the reason why I'm telling you this story, I'll never forget the day my luck changed. And it was funny, I had been doing this for probably about 3 years, renting cars. There was a fateful day, I was running late for a meeting, and I can't remember, I know it was a sound stage for a movie, but I can't remember which one. It might have been The Matrix, actually. But I was late, and so I was running to budget rent a car, and I got to this intersection, and I was only a mile away from my house. I got to this intersection, and I had the hand instead of the little walkie person, so I couldn't, there was cars, going everywhere. So I had to wait for the little walkie person to cross the street. So I'm standing there, and I'm kind of frantic a little bit, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so late. But I turn and look, and I happen to see on the corner of where I'm standing, there's like this semi-truck, and in the window, it says, rent me for $19.95 a day. And I was like, what? So I stand back and look. I'm standing at a U-Haul rent-a-truck center that for 3 years I've been running past this place. And the crazy thing was, when I was renting cars at Budget Rent-A-Car that was 4 miles away, it was $40 a day. For U-Haul, it was only $20 a day, and I get to drive this big fun truck. So true story, for the next 2 years until I was able to buy my own car, I would rent U-Haul trucks. It was only a mile away, and I remember pulling into, like, you know, the Universal Studios lot with this giant rental U-Haul truck. Security would come out and they'd be like, what's in the truck? And I'd be like, oh, nothing, I was just moving some furniture earlier, you know, I thought I'd just put the miles on this baby, you know. And of course when I left, they would definitely check the truck because they wanted to make sure I wasn't stealing props from the Mortal Kombat movie. The reason why I'm telling you this story, producers. So inevitably, working in Hollywood, I would get invited to really cool parties that were thrown by celebrities or big shot producers. And the interesting thing that would happen is I would go there in my U-Haul rent-a-truck. And whenever I was there, back then I was really shy, so I would usually kind of keep to myself, and just beautiful people everywhere, and I was just, I don't know, I just had a social anxiety probably back then. It never failed, any one of these cool shark barbecues or ritzy Hollywood parties that I would go to, there would always be at least one gorgeous girl wearing a party dress, sometimes two at a time. They would come with cocktails in hand, they would come and approach me. And I remember I could see them a mile away, like, oh, I think they're coming to talk to me. So they would come up to me and they would always ask me one of two questions. So the first question that they would ask me a lot is, so, what kind of car do you drive? And unfortunately, I would say, did you see the U-Haul outside, parked out front? Yeah, that's mine, baby, for the evening. And that didn't go over very well. But the second question that I would get asked a lot, they would, you know, come over, they'd have a cocktail in hand, and they would say, so, are you a producer? And I'd say, no, I'm a concept artist. And they would just turn and walk away. Yeah. My first question was, what's wrong with a concept artist? But the real question I should have been asking, what's right about a producer? Why does everyone want to get to know a producer? Because producers, this is my definition of a producer makes things happen. They produce. So to illustrate the difference between a director and a producer, you probably know a director directs the film, right? So they're a lot more artsy, they have a vision, and they're very creative. So let me just give you a gross example. Let's say that there is a director who's filming this movie and there's this shot that is just not working out and they're all upset about it. That's where a producer would come up and say, yo, stop having a hissy fit, what's going on? Let's say this director says something outrageous like, you know what? In order for this shot to work, I need 5,000 jelly donuts smeared across the back of the set. Now, if you're like me and you're a producer, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, cuckoo, like what is wrong with this person? But that's not what a producer says. A producer would say 5,000 jelly donuts, you got it. Yeah, what kind of deal can you cook me up with 5,000 jelly donuts? Now, at that moment, wouldn't you like to be the donut company in Los Angeles that gets the call for those 5,000 jelly donuts? So there's kind of a saying in Hollywood, it's about who you know. And that's actually true, but it's about the producers that you know. And that's why everyone wants to know a producer. So executive producer is actually a step removed from that. Usually executive producers are dealing in finances and money, and usually an executive producer is someone who hears about a project, they think it's going to do really well, so they invest a lot of money into that project, and when the project does well, they get a lot of money back. A lot of times celebrities are executive producers, so you'll see a big shot name like, I remember when I was growing up, I would see all these sci-fi shows that were coming out that would say executive produced by Steven Spielberg. And as a big Spielberg fan, I would say, oh my gosh, this is a new TV show that Steven Spielberg is making. But really, Steven Spielberg had nothing to do with it. He just heard about it in a pitch meeting and he said, yeah, sounds good. So he gives it a lot of money. They use his name to help sell the show. And then hopefully if the show does well, Steven Spielberg makes a lot of money with the returns. So an interesting story about executive producers. I remember when I saw this movie called Hero. It's an Asian martial arts movie. It's a historical drama. The movie is awesome. And I remember the only reason I went to go see it is because when I saw the movie poster, at the top of the movie poster, it said, Quentin Tarantino presents. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the new Quentin Tarantino movie. So I went to go see it, and it was absolutely amazing. That movie's phenomenal. And I walked out of there going, oh my gosh, what can't Quentin Tarantino do? But it turns out the true story is that when Quentin Tarantino was in China filming the movie Kill Bill, he went to the movies one night and saw this amazing movie called Hero. And he said, "Oh my gosh, this movie's incredible. America has to see this." So he fronted the money to release the movie through Miramax. He got to put his name at the top of it, Quentin Tarantino Presents. And so all these people think that Quentin Tarantino made this movie called Hero when he really had nothing to do with it. The movie was already done. He just saw it in the theaters and he thought it was pretty cool. Next up is exterior, and I need to point out that some of these terms, in parentheses, you're going to see an abbreviation. So sometimes, for example, exterior, whenever you're reading a script, it'll never say exterior. It would just use that abbreviation, EXT, whenever you have a slug line. I'll be talking about that in a future video when I teach you guys how to write a screenplay. But with exterior, I need to talk about the difference between exterior and interior. So every shot that you have, every scene that you have, either takes place either interior or exterior. It's either one or the other. It's never in the middle. You never have an intertransdimensional doorway in between universes. You're either outside like we are now, or you are inside. Fade is very similar to dissolve, where dissolve you have moving footage that's gradually replaced by more moving footage. Fade is whenever you have an image that is going to or from a specific color, and that color is usually black. So for example, a lot of times when a movie begins, you have a black screen and it fades into the first shot. And a lot of times at the end of your movie, it fades out, or sometimes we call it fade to black. But that's the difference. It's either going to or from a specific color. Format is really just describing the kind of equipment and in particular the kind of media that you're creating. What the resolution is, whether you're shooting on film or whether you're shooting digitally. Freeze Frame is an incredible song by the J. Giles Band, and when I was in 4th grade, that was one of the first bands I was in. We rocked that song at the talent show. Freeze frame also is when everything stops. So you've kind of got this moving footage and suddenly everything stops and the frame just kind of stays still. Everything is still the frame. Now what's important to know is that it's not that everything stopped. The footage is still moving, in this case at 24 frames per second. So when you have a freeze frame, it's really just the same image that you're watching over and over again. Location. So we need to talk about the difference between filming on a location and filming on a set. Whenever you're filming on location, you are actually there. So for example, when we filmed the Aladdin 3477 trilogy, we actually filmed at the Silver Lake sand dunes. We filmed on location. It wasn't really the desert, but we made it look like the desert because we were actually filming on real sand dunes. That's on location. When you're filming on a set is an artificial area that's constructed. It's made to look like a real location, but it's not. It's fake. So a lot of times, for example, when you see television shows, when it takes place in someone's apartment, that's always a set because it's just a lot easier. They can control things a lot better. If it's getting too hot, they can turn on the AC. There's a window out back. They can make it look like it's daytime. They can make it look like it's nighttime. They can make it look like it's raining. So they have a lot of flexibility. By the way, have you ever noticed in pretty much any sitcom you've ever seen, we're talking Three's Company, Friends, How I Met Your Mother, Seinfeld, have you ever noticed that when you're looking at their apartment, when they come in through the front door over here, the kitchen is always here, then the first bedroom is here, then there's kind of a couch here, there's a window outside here, then there's a second bedroom, and then the bathroom is always over here. Always. Right? You ever notice that? We're going to talk about why when we get into a future video where we get into staging dialogue. But what's interesting about when you watch a film, half of the movie is usually on a set and half of it's on location. A lot of times it might be quickly moving back and forth, but hopefully you're not noticing that. Hopefully when you watch a film, it just seems like it's all taking place in a New York City apartment, like it's all actually there. But a lot of times it's just flip-flopping. There's certain things that are a lot easier on location. something like a desert for Aladdin 3477, that would have been really tough to make a fake set of a desert, like what we would have bought a bunch of sand and I would have painted like fake sand dunes in the background. That would have been really, really tough to do. But there were other times that we filmed where building a set made absolute sense. We had underground caves. We don't really have underground caves here, and even if we did, we needed to control the lighting and we needed to control like the safety of it all. So in that case, it was actually a lot better to build a set. Next up is off camera or off screen. They actually mean the same thing. And what that is, it's anytime something is happening that you know it's there, but you don't actually see it. It's off the screen. It's kind of out of frame. And this can be a very creative way to do your storytelling. So for example, let's say that I happen to be talking smack about my friend James. So let's say there's a scene, I'm talking to someone else, and I say, oh my gosh, can you imagine James? I mean, what he was saying earlier today.
Yeah, okay, Busch, want a piece of me?
So you see how like obviously like it's like I didn't know James was there, but that's really interesting because now it's like the audience also didn't know James was there. So at the moment I hear it and you see my eyes get big and I kind of look over this way like whoops, oh my gosh, foot in the mouth. That's interesting for the audience too, because the audience probably also is like, oh, I did not know James was there. How awkward is this, right? So that's one way that you can use off camera and off screen. Over the shoulder shots or OTS, this is actually the shot you see the most in movies, in animation, even in martial arts movies, especially when there's any kind of dialogue. Usually you have a shot that's over the shoulder of someone speaking, you see the other person talking, and then it kind of flip-flops the other way. We'll get into that, of course, when we get into staging dialogue. Pan is whenever you have a camera on a fixed axis, usually like a tripod, and you can either pan left or you can pan right. Not to be confused with tilt. Tilt is when you tilt up or you tilt down. And a lot of times people will make the mistake of saying you pan up to a window. You can't pan up to a window. You can tilt up to a window. Perspective is something that we use in all of the media and communication arts. By definition, it's anytime you are creating the illusion of 3D on a 2D surface. So a lot of times when you think of perspective, you think of those drawings that we do where there's like buildings going back into perspective. And yes, that's exactly what perspective is. But we actually use perspective in photography because you're looking at a flat image and that image is 2D, but the image you're looking at kind of looks like it's 3D. So that would also be true of movies, animation, illustration. Pretty much any kind of visual storytelling that you're doing is dealing with perspective. Point of view, POV. So in most of your cinematic movies, usually people are not looking directly into the camera. You'll see it sometimes, but usually not. The reason why is because it's what we call breaking the fourth wall. So how weird is it if you have a character that says, yeah, that's right, I thought so. That would be really weird, right? Because sitting in the audience, you're like, oh my gosh, Harrison Ford just looked at us and winked. That's really weird. So it's called breaking the fourth wall. But sometimes you can, because it is awkward, sometimes you can use that in a way where it kind of maximizes the effect. For example, I remember I saw a movie called Silence of the Lambs, and there's all of these shots where Clarice is visiting Dr. Hannibal, the cannibal Lecter, and there's all of these shots where they're talking to each other, and it's directly in the camera like this. And I remember when I saw that movie, I was so creeped out because it looked, I mean, here's Hannibal Lecter. This guy eats people. It's like the creepiest thing ever. And he's saying, Clarice, do you hear the screaming of the lambs? And he's looking right into the camera, and it is just like, oh, it is so creepy because it is breaking the fourth wall. So it's not something that you want to do often, but just sometimes it works for maximum effect. I want to show you something right now. Using POV, I want to duplicate a shot from Evil Dead. And James, if I can have the camera really quick. So what you're looking at now, I've just recreated a scene from the Evil Dead movies where Ash is being chased. This is a POV shot, but what's interesting is there's this evil force that's chasing James, and you don't even know what it is. You can't tell what it is, but man, does it look menacing. All right, so what I'm going to show you now is a reverse angle, and there's a couple different ways to do it, but this is going to be a reverse angle combined with a POV shot. So, all right, James, I'm going to be honest with you. I was really upset about what you said earlier.
I mean, I was being honest about it, let's be fair.
Honest? How do you figure? I mean, come on. I mean, what were you thinking?
It is statistically proven that the 3 best pizza toppings are bacon, onion, and sausage.
Dude, you are out of your mind. I mean, dude, pizza should always be just cheese.
Okay, just cheese is fine. However, you're taking away the mellifluous palette of all the flavors coming together in a symphony on your taste buds, waltzing across your palate like 2 entwined tango dancers.
Next, we are going to talk about scene, but we need to talk about the difference between a scene and a shot. A shot is just this continuous footage that you have. A scene is usually a collection of shots that have an entire group of uninterrupted storytelling. Now, sometimes a scene can be an entire shot, but as soon as you change either the time or you change location, you instantly have jumped to a new scene. All right, so I want to describe the difference between what is one scene and what is 2 scenes. So for example, if I ask James this. Hey James, hey, you mind running inside and grabbing me one of those ruby red monsters?
Yeah, Matt. I'm totally all over that. Ruby red monsters. Diverters, you know? Clearly the only thing we got in this house.
So that was 2 scenes. We had the one scene where James was outside, and then we had the next scene where James was inside. But now I want to show you another piece of storytelling. Hey James, hey, you mind running inside and grabbing me one of those ruby red monsters?
Yeah, Matt. I'm totally all over that. Ruby red monsters. I think someone's legs are broken around here. Just country coming all the way over here. Let's do menial tasks. And like, it's all fine, it's fine, whatever. I'm a housewife, that's cool. Ruby red monster, ruby red monster. There's one. Whatever, that's cool. Diverters, you know? Clearly the only thing we got in this house. Gone. Appreciate whatever.
So that, because we started with James outside, the fact that we never cut to another scene inside, we never jumped to a new time, and we never jumped to a new location, that was actually one scene. Stock footage, sometimes it's called library shots, and you can find all cool stock footage. You can find stock animation, stock sound effects, stock music, and it's material that already exists that you can purchase usually for a cheap price, and you get what's called non-exclusive rights, and you can put this stock material into your movies, your videos, your video games, whatever it is that you're using it for. So I remember at first when I was making my own movies, I was kind of against the idea of stock footage. I just kind of felt like if I didn't make it, why would I use any stock footage? I felt like it was cheating. But I remember for my first independent feature that I made called Conjure, it's this cheesy supernatural thriller. Trust me, you don't want to look this up. It actually used to be on Netflix, and last I saw it, it was in Kmart in the bargain bins for like $2.99. But it was my first movie. It's where I made all my mistakes. There was a scene in the middle of the movie. It took place during the day and all this creepy stuff happens. And then at nighttime, I wanted to have an establishing shot of a full moon. Why? Because it's just kind of this trope. It's this cliche that when you see a full moon, like that's when creepy stuff is really going to start to happen. So I needed a shot of a full moon. Now I knew it's not a full moon every night, so I hopped online and I found out when the next full moon was going to be. So I wrote it down on my calendar, and online it even told me like it's going to be at 9 o'clock at night. So I wrote it on my calendar, and about a month later, I went outside at 9 o'clock at night. I set up my camera, and then I looked in the sky, and I'm like, okay, moon, where's the moon at? Man, I don't even see stars. What does that mean? It means obviously there's clouds everywhere. I was going to totally miss out on this full moon. Okay, no problem. So in my calendar, I went online, found when the next full moon was coming. This time it's 4 in the morning. So I write it down in my calendar. I set my alarm clock, and guess what? I sleep right through my alarm clock. So another month goes by. I go outside. There's the full moon, and it's perfect for my movie. There's like clouds floating in front of it, and it actually does look really creepy. It's got like this glow to it. So I set up my camera, I've got everything ready to go, and I'm having technical difficulties. I can't even get my camera to focus on this beautiful moon that I have before me. So at that point, I said, you know what? I'm not going to buy any. I'm totally against stock footage. I'm not going to put any in my movie. I'm just going to look. I mean, it's not cheating to look on the menu, right? So I went inside and I looked up full moon stock footage, and oh my gosh, I found all of this cool stuff. It was amazing. And the shot that I purchased, I think it was like only $13, and I found this shot where it was this creepy tree. It didn't have any leaves on it, so it looked like it was dead, and it was time-lapse footage of a moon and all the stars moving past the tree like this. It looked awesome. Here's what's funny. You have non-exclusive rights. That means other people can buy that footage as well. Since then, I have actually seen that shot that's in Conjure. I've seen it 3 times. I saw it once. I can't remember the movie that I saw it in. I actually saw it on the show Lost, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. And then also, I saw it on the show called Vampire Diaries, and there it was in the background. Now, you see so many full moons on TV. There's no way anyone was watching Vampire Diaries and they said, look at that, it's the same moon that was in that cheesy movie Conjure. No one would ever pick up on that, but stock footage, there you go, it's for you to use, and it's actually pretty cool. Tracking shot is anytime you have moving footage. So a tracking shot could be a dolly shot, but really, even if someone is just walking with a camera, or you might have someone with a glide cam, or you might have someone sitting outside, with a car, and they're driving, they just got the camera out the window. As soon as your camera is moving, it is called tracking. So it's important to know that all dolly shots are tracking shots, but not all tracking shots are dolly shots. Kind of the same way all Lamborghinis are cars, but not all cars are Lamborghinis. A 2-shot, very simple. It's just a shot that has 2 people. Voiceover, also VO. So this is anytime you have the voice of an unseen person or narrator. You've probably seen, like in the 90s, like every movie trailer that came out, it had that guy's voice that says, in a world where things are not as they seem. So that would be a voiceover. Also, if you ever call someone on a telephone, whenever you can hear their voice, there is no way that a camera is going to hear someone's voice on my phone. So that would be a voiceover that would be recorded separately, and then they put an effect on it so it sounds like it's coming from the phone speaker, but that would be a voiceover. Wipe is another transition between scenes, and it kind of wipes across, right? We're going to talk about that when we get into camera techniques and transitions. Zoom. So every camera that you have has this little toggle switch on it, and there's a W and a T on there. No, it doesn't stand for white trash. The W stands for wide angle, the T stands for telescopic, and you can make it look like it's coming closer and farther away. But when you're using zoom, it's important to know all it's doing is kind of taking your frame and it's zooming into a smaller space, and then obviously you can zoom back out. But the camera didn't necessarily move, it's just that you're kind of framing into a tighter shot. That's what zoom is. You can also track in and out. Obviously, if you move the camera closer, that would be a tracking shot, and that would be different. So I want to illustrate for you guys the difference between a zoom shot and a tracking shot. So here is my buddy James. He is chilling out in this chair, and right now the camera is a wide angle. It's completely zoomed out, and I'm going to zoom into a close-up of James. And now I'm zooming back out. So tracking in is where you're physically moving the camera closer or moving the camera farther away. Anytime you have the ability to track, it takes a little bit more time to set up, and you want to get it nice and smooth to get it just right. But tracking always looks better. When you have a zoom shot, it's just kind of cheap. It's just really just kind of, it's magnifying the lens to a tighter frame. But whenever you're tracking in, you can feel the perspective of the world around you moving closer to the object. So when you track into something really quick, it literally feels like your audience has been grabbed and is yanked into the camera really quickly. So tracking is very effective. Next, the trombone shot is where you are either far away and zoomed in, but then you track in closely while zooming out at the same time, and it has this really eerie effect where it looks like the background is stretching. Then you can do a trombone shot the opposite, where you are close to your subject, you're on wide angle, but then as you physically move back, you zoom in at the same time. So those are some cool things that you can play with your camera. All right, that is my industry terminology for you guys. You guys should know this stuff soon, not only for getting into the industry, but a lot of the videos that I'm going to be covering in the future, I'm going to be using a lot of these terms, and I don't want you guys to be left in the dark. So you want to use this jargon so you can impress people with how professional you are and that you are in the know. If you dig this video, if you feel like it helped you out, you should give me a like. If there's any terminology that you use a lot and you feel like I didn't cover it, you should let me know in the comments what terms those are. Also, you should be subscribed to my channel and you should hit that notification bell. Last but not least, share because you care, and you can follow me on the IG.